Changing your flood zone designation here in 2025, is it possible? Well, let's talk about that a little bit today. Look, more than a decade ago, I changed my own flood zone in flood zone AE right here, and it saved me thousands of dollars. But what exactly does it take to change a flood zone designation here in 2025? Typically, this is called a process of letter of map amendment. If you're looking at an elevation certificate and you don't have one, getting one may be your first step here. But before you go and waste your money on one, you want to make sure that you're in flood zone AE that has a base flood elevation and not flood zone AE that many times does not. What you're looking for though is on that elevation certificate, the first step, to even see if you have a fighting chance. Check and see if your lowest adjacent grade is above your base flood elevation. If it is, by at least 6 inches to a foot, this tells us, hey, the first step is met. We may have a fighting chance here. The next step, making sure you don't really have a history of flooding on your property, or really in your area, and that you're not in a designated floodway. Because if you're in a designated floodway, a local floodplain manager may have to sign off on it, which could be difficult. Because remember, that floodway is that overflow area of the water source, so it can be very hard to get flood zone changes done in these areas. As you go through this process, though, it can take a couple of months submitting all this different information to FEMA. That's why we've helped thousands of people in the last decade. Is it's sometimes not a fun or easy process because you're not directly communicating with someone. Sometimes you're going through a chat. There's like 5 different documents you got to have. If the tax plat doesn't show the right thing, or subdivision plat. And so these are all things you want to understand when you're changing this. And then once you get this change, you still got to get a letter from your bank stating they're not going to require flood insurance. Because look, at the end of the day, they technically could still require flood insurance even though you're not in that special flood hazard area. We have seen this. Once you get those things done, then it could remove the requirement for flood insurance, changing your flood zone probably from flood zone AE to flood zone X. And when you do this, it does a few things. First of all, it can potentially help you increase your property value 10 to 15%. Because if your property is not being required for flood insurance, but your neighbor's is, it could be a big selling factor for you. Other thing could be flood insurance costs. Look, this isn't going to have as big deal on flood insurance costs as it did a decade ago, but it could potentially on the private side. But FEMA no longer uses flood zones to determine their rates. So when getting your flood zone changed, this is kind of the process to start. Look, if you'd like us to help you work with you and do this is we do it every day. You can click in the description of this video and fill out the form on our website to start the process of reviewing your elevation certificate. I'm Chris, the Flood Insurance Guru, and I look forward to speaking to you in our next video. And remember, continue watching this playlist on Flood Zone AE and make sure to stay tuned for the last video where we answer frequently asked questions and we talk a little bit more about these flood zone changes. Remember to share, subscribe, and like the channel below. Thank you.